Hi, everybody. So this lesson is meant to help you continue working on the argument breakdown worksheet. So this argument breakdown worksheet is the assignment you're working on this week. And in the last lesson, we went over part 1, how to do the APA reference list entry. Okay. So today, this lesson, we're going to start with part 2, and specifically we're going to work on writing the author's claim in your own words and writing the major supporting points in your own words. Okay. As you look down here, you'll see that the table has 5 rows for the supporting points. The number of supporting points, depending on the article, could vary very much. So if you're reading the article and you think there's more than 5 supporting points, you could go in here and insert another row as needed. If you're reading the article and you think there's fewer than 5 supporting points, you can delete a row as needed. All right. So don't assume that just because there's 5 rows here that there's only 5 supporting points. It really depends on the article. The evidence, we're going to talk about that in another lesson, and the counter argument, we'll talk about that in another lesson. So let's focus on claim and major supporting points, right? So you should see in the lesson materials this kind of a little sample. It's not even an essay, it's just a couple paragraphs that I'm going to be using as an example, so you can bring that up if you want to. And let's go ahead through a little slideshow here. All right. So main idea and major details. So what we're doing here is what's called interpretation. And what we're doing when we interpret is identifying the most important point, the main idea, sorting out what are the major supporting points, and understanding what's important versus what's interesting. Okay? Okay. So first we're going to look at how to identify the main idea. I'm sure that some of you have done work with this in previous classes, identifying the main idea of a passage, but I'm going to go through some strategies that I think might help you with this. So some other terminology you might hear for the main idea, we might call it the author's claim. Some people might call it the author's thesis. So these are just different terms for the same basic concept here. And what it is, it's the controlling idea for the entire reading, the entire article. You want to write it in one sentence that sums up the entire article. And what I really want you to get in the habit of doing here is writing the main idea in your own words. So I'm going to go over a few ways to do that. All right. So first of all, it's really important to actively read and annotate the entire article so that you can get a feel for what the main idea of the entire article is, not just the first half of the article. So it's important to go through the whole article and really pay attention to what the author's saying. You can look at the title, and if they're example, you would look at headings because those will hint at the main idea. As you're reading and annotating, you should pay special attention to anything that's repeated, words and ideas. That helps you identify the topic. You might then ask, what's the most important thing the author wants us to know about this topic? And why does it matter? Okay, so let's have a look at the sample. Go out of this, and we'll go over here to this urban gardening example. All right. And what you might want to do right now is pause the video and read through these few paragraphs and maybe take some notes. What do you see repeated? What do you think is the topic? What is the most important thing the author's trying to say about this topic? And then after you do that yourself, you can come back and I can talk through my process. All right? So go ahead and pause, go through these 2 paragraphs, and then see if you can write a sentence for these 2 paragraphs, stating the main idea in your own words. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what's going on in here. So the first thing that I would do is look at the title and maybe ask myself, urban gardening, a solution to food insecurity. We might be able to make this into a main idea sentence. So just tentatively, I might say something like, the author states that urban gardening is a solution, to food insecurity. So this is something that a lot of students do when they're stating the main idea, is they take the title and they just make it into a sentence. That's something I would actually avoid doing, because a lot of times that's not going to give an overview of the whole article. You might be missing something. And again, we're not really using our own words here if we just a solution to food insecurity, right? And you could see that when I clicked on solution, it gave me, didn't it? There we go. It gave me some synonyms, but even if we just put in synonyms, but we keep the same sentence, we're not doing a good job writing our main idea sentence there. So if that's your tendency, I would stay away from that. So let's strike that through, all right? And I would say, just as some notes here, using the title as your main idea sentence isn't the best idea because, you aren't using your own words and you might not cover ideas or material from the entire article. All right, so I would avoid that as your strategy. So what we want to do instead is read through, and what I would do is pay attention to what's being repeated a lot. Okay. So as cities grow and green spaces shrink, urban gardening has emerged as a way to address food insecurity and environmental concerns. Many urban areas are considered food deserts where fresh produce is scarce and residents rely on processed foods from convenience stores. So one of the things I notice here is repetition. Sorry. Make this a little bit. Boop. Boop. So if I were annotating, if I actually had a paper that I was annotating, handwriting, I would write this in my annotations. Repetition of food scarcity, insecurity, lack of access to healthy food. All right, because I see food insecurity, food desert means the same thing, scarcity, right? Unhealthy foods. So I saw that repetition in that couple sentences. All right. Repetition. Okay. By growing fruits and vegetables in community gardens, on rooftops, or even indoors using hydroponic systems, city dwellers can gain access to fresh, nutritious food. So here, notice up here we had urban gardening, and here we have community gardens and city dwellers. So we also have this repetition of urban city gardening. All right. So we're noting what's being repeated a lot. In addition to improving food access, urban gardening contributes to environmental sustainability by reducing the carbon footprint associated with transporting produce over long distances. So again, we saw urban gardening repeated. We saw that idea of access to healthy food being repeated. Now we have a new idea brought in here. So another thing that we can watch for is transitions like this. So transitions, actually that's for major details. Let's come back to that. It also provides social benefits by bringing communities together, promoting healthy eating habits, and offering opportunities for education about sustainable agriculture. So see that idea of sustainability and sustainable coming up. So another thing that's repeated a lot, environmental sustainability. All right. So again, I'm noting what's being repeated and just kind of jotting that down in my annotations. As urban populations continue to rise, so again, there's that idea of city, cities are increasingly investing in gardening initiatives to promote food security and environmental well-being. So we see that repetition again. Major projects, such as well-funded community gardens and extensive rooftop installations, are being planned to reach broad populations. So what do we see repeated here? Or what's the new idea? Major projects and initiatives. So there's that idea of initiatives and projects being repeated. Projects, plans, initiatives, right? Well-funded community gardens, repetition. Extensive rooftop installations, repetition. In contrast, several smaller scale efforts have been established. So again, that's these projects, plans, initiatives, efforts. Good. For example, a pilot program in Portland distributed starter kits with seeds and basic gardening tools to residents, and a Chicago neighborhood launched weekend container gardening workshops that repeatedly boosted local participation by 12% over the summer. These local initiatives contribute to the overarching benefits of urban gardening and addressing food deserts and reducing environmental impacts. So again, we see that initiatives being repeated, food deserts, food scarcity, and environmental impacts. So see how through the whole article, these are the concepts that are being repeated, all right? So urban gardening, accessing healthy food or food scarcity or food insecurity, environmental sustainability or environmental benefits, and projects, plans, initiatives, and efforts, all right? So we note what's being repeated. What's the most important thing the author wants us to know, and why does it matter? So I think urban gardening, we can agree, is the topic, right? So urban gardening is the topic. What's the most important thing the author wants us to know about that? He talks about how it helps people access healthy food, how it helps. Here how I'm saying helps a lot. Helps the environment, helps bring communities together. So he's saying that urban gardening has a lot of benefits for the community. The second part, he talks about projects and plans and efforts that different communities have established. So if we want to work that into our sentence, we might say that a number of urban communities have promoted urban gardening because of the many benefits associated with it. So let's see how that sounds. I don't like how I repeated urban there, but let's see. A number of urban communities have promoted urban gardening because of the benefits offered to the citizens. And a lot of times it's a little bit of trial and error here. Saying now here's, we have this grammar checker. I'm okay if you use it for little changes like this. I don't want you to use it to rewrite entire sentences or paragraphs. Promoted urban gardening because of the benefits offered to the citizens. I'm going to take out the, because that sounds awkward to me. And because I have urban and urban here, I don't love that. It's not the end of the world, but I don't love it. And I want to keep it with urban gardening, so maybe I'll go over here. I don't like metropolitan either. We could just say city. Maybe you just say cities have promoted. Many cities have promoted urban gardening because of the benefits offered. And I might just take out offered to citizens because of the numerous benefits. All right. Okay, so that would be the process I would use to try to identify the main idea. So remember what we did was this one. We looked at the title, but we didn't use the title as our main idea sentence. It gave us a little hint, but if you're just using the title as your main idea sentence, that's probably not going to work. We did go through and actively read and annotated as much as I could. And one of the things that we really paid attention to was what was being repeated a lot through the whole article. Also, what did the author want us to know about urban gardening? He wanted us to know that it has a lot of benefits. Why does it matter? Because we can see that like a lot of cities are promoting it, right? That because of the benefits. So that's the process. Now, again, with a longer article like the one you're reading for R2, it's going to take a bit longer than that. But that would be the process I would go through. And the annotation and paying attention to being what's repeated a lot is probably going to help you. Okay. Now, the next part is looking for, let's continue here, the major details. So the major details are the major supporting points for the main idea. We might see them presented as, don't I have it on here? All right. They might be reasons, like if the author's making a strong claim, an argument, you might look for the reasons they believe their claim. It might be background information. It might be recommendations. There's a lot of different things that you can look for there. All right. The major details, it might be a single paragraph, but when you get into longer pieces, like the one you're reading for R2, a major detail might be covered in several paragraphs. And again, you want to be able to express these in your own words. So let's go through some ways you might do that. Okay. One really helpful way to come up with major details is when you annotate, write a sentence in your own words that sums up a paragraph, or if there's a group of related paragraphs, writing sentences in your own words that sum up those paragraphs, those sentences might give you your major details. All right, so that would be one thing I would recommend that you do. The other thing you might do is look for general answers to the questions set up by the main idea. So if you found the main idea, a lot of times we can change that into a question. And then what we want to try to do is come up with what are the general answers. And that might help us identify the major details. And I'm going to show you over on the example. There we go. This is what I was looking for. Over on the example paper. What are the general points the author provides to support the main idea? Like reasons, background information, recommendations, general examples, right? Now, one of the things that sometimes happens is people get caught up in the specifics, and we want to try to save the specifics for later, kind of sweep them to the side. So one of the things I tell people to do when they're annotating is note the specific details. So these would be things like names, numbers, quotes, research studies, description, things like that. If you do get caught up in them, because they're usually more interesting, ask yourself, the author's showing me something here, but what's the bigger picture that the author's trying to make? And again, I'm going to show you an example over on the sample. So let's go over to urban gardening. Okay. So here's where we want to list major details in our own words. One of the things that I would say is it's very, very difficult to write something in your own words if you're looking at the article. So this is why I usually do things like this, like list what's being repeated a lot over here, and use that list to write my main idea sentence and my major details instead of trying to look at the article and do it. All right. It's very hard to do that because you'll probably be tempted to use a sentence from the article, and that's not going to help you. All right. So this repetition that we noticed also will probably help us with our major details, because if there's ideas that were repeated, but they didn't end up in our main idea sentence, they're probably going to be major details. All right. So some of the things that we see over here, like food scarcity and lack of access to healthy food, didn't turn up in our main idea sentence, but it was still something that was repeated a lot. So I'm going to make that, okay, food scarcity access to healthy food. So I'm going to put that as one of our possible major details. The other one that we saw was environmental sustainability. So I'm just jotting those things down. We also saw, when it talked about plans and initiatives, we saw large scale and smaller scale programs. Okay, because that was something that turned up in our repetition, and it was mentioned a little bit in our main idea sentence, but not in this way. All right, so that's one way that we can look for major details, is if we really did a good job listing what was being repeated a lot. If we have something in our list of repeated concepts and it didn't turn up in our main idea sentence, that might help us come up with the major details. Okay. The other strategy that we saw over here was if we came up with a general answer to the question set up by the main idea. Many cities have promoted urban gardening because of its numerous benefits. The question there is, what are the benefits? Helps access healthy food. Environmental sustainability. We also saw that benefit, and I'm going by memory here because we don't want to look at the article if we can avoid it. So trying to remember some of the big picture ideas that the author brings out is going to help you do this in your own words a little bit better. If you're having trouble remembering some of those major ideas, those major details, that's a sign that maybe you didn't read as actively as you could have. So you might need to go back and reread. Or if you do have to go back to the article, maybe go back to your annotations instead of the specific article words. So I remember them talking about societal benefits. Okay, so like that idea of brings people together, right? That was another benefit. General points, reasons, background information. So we're kind of talking about general examples here, right? Sentences in your own words, summing up the paragraph. I think we got that. Now, here, when I say if you start getting caught up in specific details, names, numbers, quotes, one of the things that, for example, if we looked at this main idea sentence, many cities have promoted urban gardening because of its numerous benefits. Some people might say, what cities, right? And if we answer the question, what cities, and we come up with Portland and Chicago, those to me seem too specific. Those are minor details, specific examples that are probably not going to go in our list of major details, all right? So if you find that you're getting caught up in those smaller details, you have to ask yourself, what's the big picture? And the big picture is that there's a number of cities that are have started, and then maybe we'll just combine that with what we have here, large and smaller scale programs. Okay? So just in these two paragraphs, looks like I found 4 major details. Okay? So we could probably use that. So the way that would look over here on the argument breakdown is, if we were doing the argument breakdown on this one, I'm just going to do this real quick. Go over here, our major supporting points. So we only have 4, so I could take out this extra one if I wanted to. Delete row. And boop. 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 Oops. Boop. Nope. Why is that not working? Am I frozen again? There we go. There we go. Okay. And I probably make these, it says list in your own words, so you could just do like a bulleted list, or you could make these sentences. if you wanted to. So one benefit is to reduce food scarcity and improve access. Another benefit is environmental sustainability. Another benefit, is bringing people together. Okay? Make sense? So, do I have anything else on here? Yep. So one of the things that I would recommend is, as you're annotating from here on out, one of the things to start taking note of are these like repetitions, writing sentences in the margins, some of paragraphs or groups of related paragraphs, noting the evidence, but not getting too sucked into it just yet. We'll deal with that in the next lesson. But these are some of the ways to make sure that you are kind of sorting out what's important from what's interesting, so that you're getting the big picture from the article and not just kind of getting sucked into too many details. So I hope that helps. And you will be doing that with the R2, reading 2, so that you can do your argument breakdown. All right. Take care. Let me know if you have questions. Bye-bye.